So I want to get into a topic that y'all have primed me on, basically, and ironically, the topic is priming. It's how we end up getting audiences primed for certain responses. And this is not just a thing that I see on right-wing content and make fun of. This is a thing that I sadly see in my own community. So we're going to go ahead and address that right now. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and get into the fan art section as per the usual. This one is from Blue. As a warm-up drawing, I drew Suris in 40k Terminator Power Armor. Nice! The next one we have here is from Cringy Loon. I tried to use markers with blending for the first time. I took a picture on each step in case I ruined it. Boop, boop, and boop. I'd say you didn't ruin it. I'd say you did a way better job with markers than I ever would. And the last one we have is from Robotic Kitty. Eldritch is your girlfriend? So I guess we have Eldritch Saki. Jesus Christ. As always, everybody, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. But, with that said, I want to get into today's topic. And I'm going to first recognize that this is a thing that happens in 9 Rose. I swear to God, I am primed to hate you. 9 Rose T just dropped to 50,001 channel points on a fucking... Oh, whoa! I just want to talk about things. And yet... I have to do that. I have to do that. God. And Calderfer, thank you for your points, friend. You fucking degen. Hammer, stop! I want to get into... I want to talk about the thing! It's just... At least you're on the right side of history. Oh, well. There! You got all your redeems out of the way. All of them are done. Fuck. Okay, let's talk about priming and why it's a bit of a problem and why it's sometimes unavoidable, but we do need to make sure that people recognize that it's a thing, because you might be able to recognize that this is a thing that happens to most people, for most creators and most audiences, and it may be a good idea to start recognizing when this happens to you. So what is priming? Well, priming refers to how someone can activate certain associations or expectations in an audience's mind, such as by using cues, metaphors, analogies, anything that can influence anyone's interpretation or judgment on a topic. Now, we're going to first talk about how this works in my audience, because I feel like that's important. And then we're going to start working on how this affects other right-wing audiences as well. But let's first check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. How many times in the YouTube videos or in the chat on Twitch have y'all seen the statement, is this person supposed to be right or left? Are we supposed to be criticizing this person? How many times have we seen that kind of stuff in my audience? Because I'd say I've seen it a few more times than I'm comfortable with. I really have. The fact of the matter is, you're not supposed to feel a certain way about anything. Mash Buttons, thank you for the follow. Said, wait, that matters? Yes, absolutely. That matters a lot. Because here's what happens, Dunaboyo. Here's what happens. When somebody is looking for that, they are engaging in what's called the poisoning the well fallacy. Now, I'll quickly grab the definition of it for you. And there's a reason that I've very, very personally made sure that when I am engaging this, I literally call it poisoning the well. You guys have probably heard me say that before. I'm not saying that as a funny turn of phrase. Also, MechJep, thank you for the follow. I'm not saying that as a funny turn of phrase. I'm saying that because, in all honesty, I am trying to get you guys to understand that if I am doing something that is fallacious, I may still believe I am correct, but I am doing that. So poisoning the well is a type of informal fallacy where adverse information about a target is preemptively presented to an audience with the intention of discrediting or ridiculing something that that target person is about to say. So, for instance, let's say a person says the sky is blue, but I tell you beforehand this person is a Nazi. You are now pre-primed, your well has been poisoned, as to the truth value of anything this person says. They may be right or wrong that the sky is currently blue, but your evaluation of that information is going to be curbed by the prior knowledge that this person is a Nazi. Again, this is why I try to actually say I'm about to poison a well here when I do this, because I don't want people to hear what I say and then go, ah, yes, this is a legitimate way to determine truth. This is a legitimate way to ascertain truth. Nope. Mighty Banana says, what is this place? This is twitch.tv/Necosuris. Hi. So, what happens when I'm covering a topic and people are a little in the water? They're a little in the mud about how they're supposed to feel about a topic. Well, then we have a very quick way of poisoning the well for ourselves, and it's the thing that I've noticed in my audience. It's when someone will say, is this person right or left? Well, the fact of the matter is, it shouldn't fucking matter. A good idea is a good idea, and a bad idea is a bad idea, irrespective of which side of the political aisle it ends on. I happen to be a socialist. I happen to be a leftist. I happen to believe that most of the economic policies under those forms of economics are better than what we have under laissez-faire capitalism. But your assertion of whether or not my opinions are true should not come from whether or not you deem me as in your camp. Whether or not you say, Suris is a socialist, therefore the thing he says is right, therefore the thing he says is something I should be agreeing with. No, you shouldn't be doing that. At no point, ever, should you have a thing be true or more important for you because of who says it or what their political alignment is. There are plenty of people who are politically left-leaning that I would legitimately call monsters in their own right. There's more people who are right-leaning that I would call monsters because those people, happen to have political ideas that I think are very, very harmful. But the fact of the matter is, you have to separate those ideas. You have to filter out the water of that well. You have to de-prime yourself from the idea that the ideas that you hear are better or worse because of what political alignment they are associated with. And again, the way that I've seen this happen most often in my audience is when somebody goes, hi, is this person right or left? Or how are we supposed to be feeling about this? These are the ways that I see it more often than not. And because I'm always looking at my own chat when I'm trying to do stuff, I see it more often than maybe I'm comfortable with. Mighty Banana says, I hate politics, see ya. Well then, see ya, Mighty Banana. Later. I sincerely hope that you never hit a point in your life where, politics ever affects you. Ever. But, regardless of that, now that I've given you a little bit of what priming is, and now that I've given you a little bit of my personal gripes with how I've seen this in my audience, now I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into that. Because there are a lot of ideas that we get primed against, and it's not the worst thing in the world. Being primed against literal Nazis, being primed against people who are very, very Randian in their approach to things like healthcare. Is it wrong to be primed against those things? It depends. Priming can both be an insulation to bullshit, but it can also be a well that gets poisoned to an otherwise good idea. It's on you. It's on everybody who's listening to content that is highly opinionated on any platform, it's on each of you to figure out which one it is. Do you feel like you're being better insulated against bullshit, or do you feel like you're able to be more susceptible to bullshit because you are hearing it from a very particular mouthpiece, or a mouthpiece of a particular flavor? Now, there's a lot of ways we've seen the right wing prime their audiences, poison those wells. Just think about the entire conversation involving pronouns. The entire conversation involving pronouns and gender and all of that has been completely ruined by right-wing politics. Let's say you've got someone like Eric July or Heel versus Babyface or any of those people, and they talk about pronouns. Their audience has already been pre-primed before going into that conversation to have a particular view on pronouns. Now, the reason I'm using the word program is very, very specific. I'm trying to be very specific with my language here. How many times have you had a conversation with somebody who has a very, very strong opinion on the pronouns thing? And it's usually like a very, very anti-trans opinion. How many times have you listened to somebody who had that opinion, and the first thought in your head was, wow, this person's brainwashed? You hear the things they said, and everything they've said has just been a straight-up parrot of another content creator that you've watched, me or Xander Hall or Demon Mama or Vosh cover. You've watched one of us cover that person. You know what they said. You recognize that this is a point lifted directly from a Matt Walsh, a Ben Shapiro, a Tucker Carlson. You recognize that immediately. You recognize that this is a person who's been quite literally programmed by another content creator to say a certain thing, to parrot that thing. And now you realize you don't just have to convince them they're wrong. You have to deprogram the way they're thinking. Because it's not just the individual bit of information they have, it's the way they're approaching information at all. Think about how many people have tried to say that Tim Pool is actually a leftist or actually a liberal if you only listen to the things he says. But everything he says, when you're not part of his audience, when you're not pre-programmed to believe he's one type of character, it all sounds like right-wing bullshit. I mean, hell, what was the thing he posted on Twitter today? Transgenderism is Nazism? Let me find that one real quick, because, you know, it's Tim Pool. Just stupid stuff. Yep, there we are. Found it. Tim Pool going, transgenderism is Nazism. Like, just... a post like that doesn't make any sense if you understand what being transgender is, what a Nazi is. But if you're part of the pronouns are bad audience, you hear that and you go, yes, those fascists are trying to tell me that I'm not allowed to call them what I want to call them. All I wanted to do was say a couple of slurs and they won't even let me do that. This is true fascism. That's what the Nazis did. Like, that audience is pre-programmed to that. And because we're not mostly part of Tim Pool's audience, we're insulated from that pre-programming. But we are not insulated from the idea of pre-programming. We're not insulated from that because there are other biases that we will have. There's biases that people in my audience will have because of that. I've tried to build an audience. Whether or not I've been successful at this job is, you know, up to y'all to decide. But I've tried to build an audience where it's okay to disagree with me. It's okay to get in a fight with me. It's okay to have a problem with what I say, because I don't want an audience that is pre-programmed to believe that something is good because it's left or something is bad because it's right. It may be the case that more often than not, things are better or things are more scientifically accurate when they are spoken from a left side point of view, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's always the case. Alpha Mario says, do you want to fight me in the boxing ring with oven mitts? Sure. If you're that hellbent on losing, I'm okay with that. You and Broadbull, thank you for redeeming your points for an all-wall. Jessa says, except you're wrong on your stance on the war words. No, I'm not. Fight me on that. But whether or not I've successfully done that is not the topic of this video. I'm not going to sit here and wax lyrical about the ways in which I've tried to make it to where it's easier to disagree with me. That's not important here. What I'm going to do instead is say, please recognize at a base level when you're asking yourself, not, is this a good idea or is this a bad idea? But you're asking yourself, do I trust the person speaking? Do I trust the political stance that they are a part of? There is a fine line between having content come from a more trusted source and believing that a source is more trustworthy because you trust them. And it's very easy to get lost in the weeds of that. It is very easy to get lost in the weeds of which one of those you're in. Again, take people who have been part of Tim Pool's audience for a long time, or Steven Crowder's audience for a long time. Oftentimes, there's a phenomena you will find where they will agree with most of what that person says, and then, when they do something that they deem heinous, when they do something that they deem inexcusable, then they turn on them, and then they suddenly start magically finding things they disagree with them on, despite the fact that they agreed with most everything they said before the heinous event. Let's take the Steven Crowder incident, where Steven Crowder was shown, yelling at his wife, where he was shown being abusive, being controlling, manipulative towards his wife. There's been a lot of people that have turned on Steven Crowder as a result of that, and are now finding disagreements in a lot of the things he said. But why? Why is that happening now? It's not like he was a different person before you saw that video. You were agreeing with everything he was saying before that video. This is a product of people who have, willingly or not, become pre-primed. They have become very, very poisoned wells. And their well got poisoned a different way. Now they are believing that things that Steven Crowder says are bad because he framed himself worse now, because there's more context to the type of person he is now. By changing his persona on accident into one that seemed like he was more misogynist, less trustworthy with his wife, less of what the traditional man thinks is okay to be in a relationship, now suddenly everything else he says seems less trustworthy. But it's not. What Steven Crowder says is bullshit irrespective of how he treats his wife. And yet, people find more bullshit in what he says now because of that bit of information leaking out. That's pre-priming in action. That's people finding ways to disagree with something somebody says, not because of the content of what they say, but because of the character of the person they think they're listening to. Again, whether or not you like me has no bearing on whether or not when I say the universe is one way or the sky is blue. It has no bearing on the truth value of those statements. And yet, I see in my audience, I see in Crowder's audience, or in this case, a lot of his ex-audience, I see in Tim Pool's audience, I see a bunch of people who are pre-primed to believe one thing or another, and it makes people easier to manipulate. And every content creator on this platform, me included, can manipulate you into doing things that you don't agree with, or believing things you wouldn't have otherwise agreed with. And not because we've presented better information to you, but because we have spoken in such a way that you think is more convincing. But this creates another problem. Content creators, our job literally is to speak. Our job is to know how to wordsmith things in a way that an audience will find digestible, in a way that an audience will find enjoyable. And that can slowly pivot people's ideas, not because of the content of what we've said, but because of how we've framed it, how we've said it. There's a wonderful experiment, not really an experiment, but a fun experiment you can do with a friend to demonstrate the power of pre-priming. If I go into a conversation blind, and I explain to you that there is this culture of people who have a chest. It is called the medicine chest. And in the medicine chest, they have special elixirs and pastes and things that allow them to live longer, or at least they believe that. And in this medicine chest, there is a sludge that they keep packaged in a tube that you don't quite know what it's made out of, and neither do the people who have it, but they still have these tubes. And these tubes of sludge, they take these tubes of sludge and they pour these tubes of sludge onto sticks, and then they shove the sticks in their mouths with the belief that this is going to extend their life, this is going to increase the likelihood that they will find a mate, and it will make them more enjoyable to be around in society. And when I explain all of this, it sounds weird, right? That's because I'm not using the words that you're used to. I've not pre-primed you. You've walked into this blind. But how much more normal does it sound if I call the medicine chest a medicine cabinet? And if I call the sludge toothpaste and the stick a toothbrush? And yes, most people who are brushing their teeth do believe that it will help extend the value of their life, extend their ability to be around people, find mates more easily, because we are literally making ourselves more presentable to the other human beings around us. When I was a kid, this was a experiment that was done on me. A teacher of mine in some of my earliest years of schoolings had this entire prompt written down. And everybody in the class, granted, we were kids, but again, perfect environment for people who weren't pre-primed to the brushing your teeth thing. Almost every one of those kids listened to that story and went, that's weird. That entire story is weird. That's just so strange. Why would you do that? Why would you shove sludge on a stick and throw it in your mouth? And then when it was explained that actually this is all stuff you already do, or, you at least should be doing, it seems so much more normal when I use the words that you've been pre-primed to associate with normalcy. But it feels so alien when I strip it away of all of that. I guarantee you can find several ways of explaining just regular things that you do in your life, or regular things to you, that can be very, very awkward to explain without any prior knowledge. So what is it like when you're trying to explain to somebody who's never had an experience with trans people, or only had experiences through the likes of Steven Crowder, Tim Pool, Matt Walsh, about what a trans person is, and you're trying to explain to them that no, these people are just as normal as you. You don't just have to explain that trans people are normal people just like you or I. You have to deprogram them from the pre-primed expectation they have of what is good and normal. If you don't do that, you will never reach those people because they've been pre-primed. And if you're in my audience, please, whenever you are asking yourself, am I supposed to be thinking a certain way about something? Stop. You are not supposed to think a certain way about anything. You are supposed to intake information and then assess the truth value of that information by using your own due diligence. Check anything I say against a vetted source that you can use, and then check that vetted source against other sources. Check citations of papers that you look at. Anything any content creator says to you can be a lie. And they can reinforce those things by priming their audiences to think a certain way. And oftentimes, the content creator might not even realize they're doing it, and even worse, the audience might not even recognize that it's happening. But that's where I got to throw it back to you guys. Have you recognized yourselves doing this before? Have you checked yourself before doing this and realized that you almost wrecked yourself? Let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already, and insert end video tagline here.